say, Chad, this guy's already doing it. Bible study for atheists. Part 1, I guess. Contradictions. This guy's name is Roger Maxon. We're the only people that watch his content. I guess I have to react to it. I'm stuck. I'm pigeonholed. He's cornered the market already. This guy and his books. You know he knows a lot of stuff because he's got books there. He's got a lot of books. Some of them, it doesn't look like their spines are toward the back. So it looks like the inside of the book is towards the outside of the thing, which is, do your bookcase how you want. But that seems, does he know how to book?
I got on the American Atheist website under their listing of biblical contradictions, and they say it is a central dogma of all fundamental, that's how they said it, Christians, that the Bible is without error. They teach this conclusion by reasoning in quotation marks that God cannot be the author of false meaning. Now, it could be that English is not their first language, so I don't want to be too hard on them, but...
Sick burn. Got their asses. I don't know. I don't even fucking follow American Atheists. They're cringe. Then they decoupled from Mr. Silverman a while ago, but do they do anything now? I don't even know. I don't necessarily disagree with what they're saying. You can say fundamentalist if you'd like. Fundamental Christians, it's fine. That's shorthand. We get what they're saying. False
meaning, and he cannot lie. And then they list several things that they see as biblical contradictions. And I want to just kind of go through these. These are really easy to figure out. First, I want to say I almost really was, years ago, I nearly became an atheist. So
Ooh, this close. That close. What made you think that being an atheist was something that would be reasonable?
Was a sort of fundamentalist Christian. I grew up, in a secular home with Christian influences. I think I was sort of half secular, half Baptist.
That doesn't sound secular. How can you can't be half Baptist. Secular is like a 100% thing. You know what I mean? That's not how being secular exists.
I nearly became an atheist, and I spent a lot of time reckoning why.
When you were like a kid?
Some of the reasons are on the surface. They're just very easy for me now to resolve. Some of the reasons were a bit deeper than this. It was struggling with the nature of the world, with...
You can't say struggling if you're going to talk about like how everybody else is like typing or talking.
Some of the reasons were a bit deeper than this. It was struggling with the nature of the world, with...
Yeah, man, stop.
Suffering in life, with, I think, my disappointment of American Christianity and its affiliation with the moral majority. There's a lot of things we could talk about, and I just want to say that...
I mean, you just sound like you're a Catholic nationalist now. It sounds like you don't really know what's going on, and you decided to, like, hook yourself to this ideology because you feel like it gives you some kind of, like, smarmy, hierarchical upgrade. You know what I mean? You feel it? Do you feel it coming off of him? He's like, well, I mean, but obviously I'm a higher life form now,
I really do understand why so many people don't believe in God anymore. But for what it's worth...
because there's no evidence. That's the number one, that stinker God didn't put any fucking evidence for himself in the world or the universe. Why would he do that? He needs faith, of course. This doesn't make any fucking sense. I need a Christian to describe to me the fickle nature of God who removed possible evidence of himself and needs your relationship to be fulfilled by the act of faith and subservience. Why does that God need that? Seems suspicious.
Some of these things, some of the ammunition against Christianity, I think is really just bad. It's like this. Mm-hmm. Right now in politics, I think the media is pretty broken on both sides. So if you listen to Republican politicians or Fox News, you're not always going to get a full picture of things as they're happening. I think that's fair to say. But if you listen to, I think, left-leaning media or so-called legacy media, you're not always also going to get a fair picture of the world.
I'm not surprised, but this guy's calling like NBC left-leaning media or something. You know what I mean? CNN left-leaning. What a false dichotomy, man. They're like kind of all the same apparatus. I feel like the thing that they split on tends to be Christianity, or at least the fundamental parts of it, like the weird stuff that the far right tries to do. But otherwise, like, the project is the same. Like, the hegemony of American, like, military might and, their influence in the white culture that they're trying to permeate and force on people is, like, not very different. Like, the aesthetics are a little different, but materially they just unfold slightly differently.
They both sort of twist things in the narrative. I think we live in the age of rhetoric and emotional expression. There's this war of attrition between left and right. in the country right now. This is not unlike what happened with the new atheists and the Christians they were debating 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when the new atheism was hot. And a lot of this rhetoric is just
New atheism? Are we just talking about Hitchens?
silly.
I think you're about as smart as you look. You're about as smart as you look. I shouldn't be in these gardens. What? You see what brain rot. You see what brain rot descends on people.
I think this falls into that category, and I want to be charitable, but these don't even form logical contradictions in any way.
The fact of something being the complete opposite of something else or very different from something else, so that one of them must be wrong? What?
Way. One listed was the Sabbath day. These authors quote Exodus 20 verse 8, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And then he quotes, without explanation, Romans 14:5, one man esteemeth one day above another, another esteemeth every day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. And apparently these folks see this as a contradiction. It's not. So in Exodus 20, this is God giving.
I don't think pointing out biblical contradictions is very helpful for guys like this. I think they're helpful for people that are like looking for some kind of unpacking. But I don't think this is a typical, like, who gives it? Is this compelling to anyone? This is why I differ from like the more liberal leaning like American atheist types, because they think that like hypocrisy or, you know, something like this is like, aha, it's like a strongly worded letter for them. I really think, I'm sure down the list they might have some different things, but this is not even like in my top 100 most interesting biblical contradictions. Like, you could do easy stuff, like ask how many animals were on the ark. Like, and most people go, oh, there's 2 of every kind. And then the Bible says it's not, although it differs with itself. God is all good and all loving, but then has to like remind himself not to murder everybody, and then also does do that before. So I don't know. Like, the contradictions are with the claims they make about the God, and then like their ignorance of the actual text, and then showing them like, look, this is what you are forced to believe if you are trying to say this. And usually for people who are unpacking their religion, it's not going to be, oh yeah, they said fucky things about the Sabbath. No, it's going to be something like the contradiction of Genesis with believing in evolution, for instance, which is why they fight so hard against it, because they understand that causally, if you have evolution, there's no need for, and obviously no truth to, the Garden of Eden story. Obviously, there wasn't just like one man, one woman. It was like a speciation thing. And we have direct evidence of human speciation and, like, you know, what it took to become modern humans. And so you lose the original sin and the reason for having Jesus at all. And that's all you have to, and that's just one thing you can do. And that helps a lot of people. Helps a lot of them get out of their religion. But it's not for everybody, because some of them are programmed to be like, evolution, macro and microevolution. You know what I mean?
Another esteem.
Anyway, this is stupid. I don't really care, American atheists, about the Sabbath thing.
As a contradiction. It's not. So in Exodus 20, this is God giving the 10 Commandments to Moses, which I think...
Well, it's definitely true. You can say that Catholics and Orthodox evolution is not an issue for them, but then when you ask them about that problem, they don't have an answer to it. So it is, and it leads a lot of them to deconstructing, because it's a contradiction within their doctrine. So I'm saying, like, the contradiction of saying that it's compatible is like just it's not. And not all Catholics agree with evolution. I argue with a lot of Catholic nationalists, especially. Usually they're the born again Christian types that are really far right, that are usually just using it to further the argument towards their right wing aims.
I would say in that day and age, especially in that place of the world, the 10 Commandments were things that people needed to follow. And I would suggest we.
Yeah, in that day and age, you needed to follow. Don't have any other gods.
Still need to follow them.
Uh-huh.
But this, in this biblical narrative, is God giving moral law to the Israelites. The other quotation is from St. Paul's letter to the Romans many, many centuries later. And it's pretty simple. Basically, in the Christian narrative, Jesus of Nazareth is seen as being this unexpected Messiah, not the Savior they hoped for or looked for. That he didn't come to restore the national boundaries of Israel against the Roman Empire. The Bible presents...
Restore the national There was no national boundary of Israel prior to... What are you talking about? That wasn't the thing. That's not... Man, he must be on some Zionism stuff if he's saying that kind of phrasing. That's interesting.
Jesus as a new Moses, establishing a new covenant. It's really a fascinating thing, actually. But in this new covenant... the Bible presents the picture that the Old Covenant has been fulfilled. The Old Covenant was a shadow of the fullness of Christ in the biblical narrative, whether we accept it or not.
Cool. So Jesus says, I have not come to change a jot nor tittle of the law. Do we listen to Jesus, or do we go with what we say about him?
In the advent of the true Messiah, Jesus Christ, many of the first
JC!
Christians were Jewish, and many of the first Christians were pagan Gentile people. And they both came into the church with their own cultural prejudices and traditions, and they had some tension there following Christ. With some of these things, Paul's saying, use your own judgment now, and things have changed, and be confident. The second one listed is the permanence of earth, which is not exactly what the Bible was describing here, but in Ecclesiastes, the earth abideth forever. Now, oftentimes, as modern people, we read things way too literally. I used to do this.
Oh, we're way too literal. The word of the Bible is straight from God's mouth and all true, but also we're taking this way too literally. It's so interesting how Christians are just always waffling on whether or not they need to take a specific biblical thing really seriously or not. You're not taking it really seriously enough with the Ten Commandments. That has to be, those are real. But also some of these other ones, not so much. Don't worry about it so much. It just seems like cultural Christianity has just eroded away a lot of these laws, and you don't want to live like that, and you realize they're untenable for modern life, and so you only pick the ones that you can sort of align with.
And then I just read literature. So if you see the books behind me, I just spent a lot of time.
If you see the books behind me, yeah, man, I see them. Man, if you hadn't pointed them out, I wouldn't have noticed. Jesus Christ. I spent a lot of time on literature. Cool, dude.
Reading old literature. I mean, from Shakespeare to Milton to, ancient books. I love Viking mythology. People didn't always speak and write in news article language. They often spoke more poetically and I think more beautifully sometimes. This is one of those examples where Ecclesiastes is written by Solomon. At this stage of his life, he's kind of a downer, and he's using Tolkien-esque type language to make a point. I don't think he's literally saying the earth will never end. He's drawing a contrast between the earth and things that last a very long time.
Yeah, he's definitely saying it lasts forever because he thinks that the earth lasts forever. He can't comprehend the time scales that we're talking about on billions of years. 4.5 billion years? He could never have No. He thinks it's going to last forever. He thinks it's an eternal thing. This is just like hope. It's pretty clear, having read Ecclesiastes.
Go on. And the silliness and foolishness of some human beings who live their lives, and their lives are very temporary, which leads this older man to question what is worth doing with your life.
Older man, 40 years old.
The atheist contrasts this passage with a passage that says, in the New Testament again, the elements shall melt with fervent heat, and the earth also and the works that are in them shall be burned up.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because later on in the New Testament, you get a more apocalyptic, cynical brand of individual who is seeing sort of like, the bad side of empire. They're on the other side of an empire building outward, right? And so to them, and you see this through cultures on the borders of all these empires, you'll see them talk about apocalyptic things. You'll see them, protest creation in a lot of ways and call for a violent end to it in different ways due to the, there's so many different reasons that cultures and religions do this kind of thing. But, at this point, it has 2,000 years of building up from the calamities of nature that happen in the Fertile Crescent area and the Tigris-Euphrates to the north. So it's this is like a built-in thing. And then, there's also the negativity that just comes from the Old Testament writing that bleeds into and informs the New Testament writing as they are, nomadic and warring and, often immiserated. It's no wonder that they get to this point. The cult has grown strong.
Yeah, so the message of the Bible is new creation, that the old creation is going to pass away, that all things are going to become new. So what human beings have messed up, one day, God's already working to set it right, but one day...
Why do you think humans messed up this? It just never makes sense to me. God created humans knowing that they would mess up. Adam and Eve is what he's talking about. So he's the one that sent that into motion. That's his doing. if you grabbed a stone and we're at the top of a mountain and we're the one to not only let the stone go, but created the stone and then let the stone roll down the hill, knowing full well exactly with 100% precision that exactly what would be destroyed in its path, it's your fault. That's no different from setting Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, understanding that he was releasing sin upon the world through his own mechanisms. He created sin. There was no reason other than God's design that the penalty for eating the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was anything but sin. Like, it could have been anything. He could have just been like, and now you've learned your lesson, ain't you? And then, laugh track goes. They go, Adam, you silly guy. And then there were parables about how you should listen to your wife or something. I don't know. Or you shouldn't, I guess, maybe.
He's going to finish the job. I don't know that this is all meant to be literal, but there will be a new creation. Circumcision.
So, yeah, let's talk about dicks. Never mind.
The atheist quote Genesis 17:10, "This is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every child among you shall be circumcised." And they see this as being a contradiction with Galatians 5. And Paul says, again, writing to New Testament Christians who typically were coming in from pagan, non-Jewish places.
Right. No, you don't have to cut your dicks. You don't have to cut your dicks. Whoa, guys. Whoa. Yeah, we've cut our dicks, but you don't have to cut your dicks. That's, we want more members. And obviously it's unpopular to be like, yeah, cut your dicks. Not a super fun time to cut your dick. So yeah. They expanded with the times. You're telling me that they found a marketing issue with you got to cut your dicks, and so they undid it? Yeah, sounds very holy. God was like, well, okay, I'll undo that.
If ye be circumcised, Christ shall profit you nothing. This is very simple. In the Old Testament, God made a covenant, and an ancient world had...
With Abraham?
Something stronger than a contract. It was binding, a little bit more strong than that contract, and there were signs or seals of those covenants. And for the Jews with Christ, or with God, Abraham was to be circumcised.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a whole test of faith thing, but it wasn't just that. Like, it wasn't just like, that's the only way we sign our covenant. It was just you had to do other shit too.
After Christ, the debate
hold up all those other things.
Was the Jews were trying to force non-Jewish people to be circumcised if they came into the synagogue, or what was now the church, to follow the Jewish Messiah, the Jewish God. They were trying to force folks to be circumcised. They went so far to say that you could not be saved as a human being if you weren't. There was a big debate about this in Acts 17. There was a council, the first council of the church, in which the elders, the leadership got together, and Peter and James were like, no, you don't have to be circumcised to be saved.
But you hear yourself, right? Like, you're just saying, well, they said they didn't have to. It's a contradiction. It's contradicting itself. Yes, this is what contradictions are.
But the Judaizers still existed.
The Judaizers? I don't like how he said that.
Paul's writing to this church at Galatia. He's arguing against the Judaizers. You don't have to keep the religious traditions of the Old Testament Jews, of Old Testament, Old Covenant Israel, to be a Christian. And because they were making this an issue of salvation, Paul's saying, if you're circumcised, what's the point of Christ? What is Christianity?
Well, it wouldn't be past God to have a second. It's like a two-factor authentication. Instead of doing your thumbprint and the PIN number, you gotta make sure that your dick foreskin is in a little baggie drying out on your hip, and that you also love Jesus a lot.
Explicitly says that baptism is the sign of the new covenant. It's the circumcision of the new covenant. Long story short, Christians don't have to be circumcised.
Long story short, these two guys were like, whoa, we don't want to cut dicks, and so we don't gotta. All right, man. Compelling stuff.
And this is not a contradiction. They mention human sacrifice, and they list Leviticus 18:21, "Thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God." So there were actually people who were literally taking children, infants, and burning them alive in sacrifice to the gods. And I think, tragically, there's actually evidence that the Vikings would sacrifice humans to Odin. There's more archaeological evidence for that now. There's Mayans, Aztecs. There are various people groups who sacrificed human...
I don't like how fucking... I'm hearing in the background.
...beings to their gods. The Bible never condones this. And this is why it was needed at that time, perhaps not now, but at that time, explicitly to be said, the Israelites were always tempted to be like the people around them. And so God is specifically saying, don't sacrifice human beings are your own children to this idol. These
Yeah, it would be fucked up to sacrifice your own child, right? Wouldn't it be fucked up to sacrifice your own child? Would that be a bad thing? Wouldn't you think a person that did that would be bad?
folks see this in contradiction to a very tragic story in the Bible, and it's pretty obvious that oftentimes the Bible talks about things that don't make the heroes in the Bible look particularly good. So just because it's in the Bible doesn't mean the Bible is saying, yeah, do this.
Oh, okay. So the heroes of the Bible are bad guys, but they were also living biblically, which is good.
This is not a contradiction. This is a tragic story of a man who probably intended well, but he was, I think, a bit superstitious. And he did something that God never told him to do. The story is awful. In Judges chapter 11...
Are we doing Judges 19? This is only 11.
This gentleman makes a vow to God and said, if you will give the Ammonites into my hand, so this man is going to war, then whoever comes forth from the doors of my house to meet me, when I return victorious from the Ammonites, shall be the Lord's, and I will offer him up for a burnt offering. So in the story, God's already going to give a victory in battle to this group over their enemies. But this poor man, probably in an attempt to manipulate God through sort of a paganisque magic, says...
The sentence that he just said. He tried to manipulate God through paganist magics. This poor man.
I will offer whoever comes through that door as a burnt offering, as a sacrifice.
Some commentators believed she-girl merely took a vow of religious life and was not sacrificed.
Keep in mind, God has already explicitly said, I don't want humans to be burned and sacrificed. This is the black mirror opposite of the Abraham story. God did not say this, he did not condone this, he did not tell anybody to do this, he explicitly said in the law, don't do this. And then, tragically, this man's daughter comes through the door first, and he sacrifices his daughter. This story is tragic, but it's not a contradiction, and it's certainly not anything the Bible condones. I think there are more difficult things that appear to be contradictions in the Bible, but I want you to just step back and ask yourself this question. Logically speaking, let's say for...
Yeah, with logic. We haven't used it yet. We're going to start it now. Let's use some logic.
Well, there is an actual... Let's say there's some strong tension in certain passages of the Bible. Let's say we can't resolve them, and it gets even worse than that, and there's a strong contradiction, an actual logical contradiction between 2 or 3 passages in the Bible. I think this is the wrong place to place the debate anyway. Does this in any way, at all, logically mean that God doesn't exist?
Well, it means your claims the Bible being perfect don't exist, which is just another thing. But, yeah, I mean, I at the beginning of this said that I don't really care about biblical contradictions so much if they're not able to, like, further the conversation towards deconstruction. Like, I don't think an isolated contradiction is very compelling in any book because I understand that humans are flawed, but you think it's magic. So it's different, you know what I mean? Like me, personally, I'm obviously, I expect contradictions. And there's thousands of them in the Bible, way more than can be talked about. He don't care. It's never bothered him. His fake voice is annoying. He's doing something. I don't know if he just doesn't use his jaw very much, or I know people that don't really move their bottom jaw very much, you know, and that's kind of like part of their thing. But it does feel fake.
Of course not. I no longer personally think that there are hard contradictions in the Bible.
Of course
you might
not.
find tension between passages, but there's no hard contradictions. But even if there were, this really doesn't have anything to do logically with whether or not God
or not. He has a hard time.
exists. It would show perhaps that biblical inerrancy is incorrect, but it doesn't override what most of our ancestors on any continent knew, that God in some way exists.
I hear Christian apologists say, well, other people believe in God, and then like they dismiss, of course, that it's entirely not their God that other people believe in, and not even close. And he's just like, well, that must mean that we're onto something. Why doesn't it mean they're onto something? Because you're you, and you centered your own beliefs without critical thought? That's crazy, dude. Can't believe a Christian would do that. Just assume that their belief is the correct one?
Now, I've talked about objective morality a bit, and I just want to recommend this to you. I'm reading this right now. It's a beautiful book. It's a companion to a book C.S. Lewis wrote many years ago, The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis.
A Christian, a devout Christian.
He was living in the time when subjectivity, moral subjectivity, positivism was coming about, and he's basically arguing strongly against that.
Right, but he's wrong because it's pretty clear that every culture has morally subjective or relativistic leanings. So it's, a denial of reality to say like morality isn't subjective, because there it is. If you define morality as like the collection of ethics that a group of people subscribe to, which is pretty much what it is, then like, yeah, that would be it. You could say they chronicle their morality and their laws and their social practices and stuff. It's a little more complex than that, but, you know, that's what it is. And they're all different, at least to some degree, certainly to many. Like, it's just real, man. Clearly, we're moral relativists on this earth. And we should just simply accept that and then try to, through education, spread the most possible ethical things insofar as culture and society is concerned. And that, of course, is to promote well-being and reduce harm. Seems like the easiest, most obvious answer. In reference to everything, not just humans, everything. Promote well-being and reduce harm for all things, including the earth and the climate and, you know, energy sources and fish.
Appendix, basically, where he lists, he goes through, he puts his money where his mouth is, and he backs up the claim that people believed in some sort of moral realism, some sort, in any loose sense, of objective morality.
Any loose sense of objective morality, all of which are relatively different from one another. C.S. Lewis, cool author, not a bright guy in this regard. Oh, yeah, well, they're all thinking about that maybe that there's some outside force that dictates their morality. Relative to one another, to varying degrees. All of them have different opinions on how it operates. It's pretty clearly... And I mean, maybe it's, you know, a storyteller from that time couldn't possibly look outside themselves. But I mean, just think about your personal capacity for telling a story and then the human capacity for telling stories, which is really where all of this comes from. And really, it's what sets us apart from the rest of the animals. And it's our ability to maintain a continuous thought of continuity that we describe as our self, right? But really, our self is the collection of memories we have in whatever, you know, loose gathering they occur now throughout your age, but like that's just where it's at. I don't know how you, I don't know. You just have to understand that humans are creatures that tell stories to describe the space they are in, and they do so with limited ability to do so accurately. You know what I mean? The naked eye and the raw human brain without education or understanding of the world is not going to have the most sophisticated view on what this is, what this God phenomenon is. And it seems to be obvious that it's a gap-seeking device. It is, without knowledge of the world and how things work, we, for some reason, because I mean it makes a lot of sense, we anthropomorphize a lot of stuff, and we see like, oh, the world must be mad at us because the floods are coming. Oh, the sun is hot, and it gives us warmth instead of the cold, so it must be maybe a good thing. Or maybe it's very angry somewhere else. Yeah, we don't see reality, we see what our brains show us. Exactly. It's as real as it gets.
And he's going back to Cicero and various other cultures around the world to show this. I'm reading this now. It's a beautiful book called After Humanity by Michael Ward. It's a guide to C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man. I had to read that book about 3 times before I understood it the first time. So this book has pictures for people like me, and it has explanation. It has articles and commentary basically explaining the book. And if you read these two together, I think you'll have a pretty good picture of the Tao, or natural law. The view that this girl's life, who was tragically sacrificed unjustly, mattered. If we do reduce morality to basically personal preference or cultural preference,
it wouldn't. I don't know if preference is the right word, but I guess you could say that. It seems more like I don't prefer that my morality is this. It just is this because of what's right and wrong based on it. You know what I mean? Like based on the mechanisms I use for it. So it's not like, I mean, like I guess for my own well-being, wouldn't it be nice to be like, yeah, genocide doesn't bother me. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not like my preference necessarily. So it feels like an incorrect term to use, but whatever.
And life is actually meaningless. Then it's really kind of difficult to complain about that girl's life being taken.
It isn't. Life isn't. Okay. This is a really big problem for religious people. They're like, I only get meaning from life if I'm eternal. Why? I don't understand. Like, they take inherently that if God exists and you have an eternal soul, it somehow makes your life meaningful. And I don't know why that's taken for granted from... Like, explain what makes that meaningful. By what mechanism does an unending life make it valuable? Like, is there a value in a soul? Because you're arguing that, like, well, A human life doesn't. So what? Okay, so you just move it to one level. What's the value of a soul? Why? And if it's just like so valuable, then why doesn't God try harder to save people that really just want to know the truth, like atheists? I think most atheists, pretty much all of them, just want to know the truth about the universe they live in, and instead of hiding from them, God could simply reveal himself, right? Instead of condemning them to hell, if souls are so important. But he doesn't, so it just seems to me that that's not the case. When you describe, life is meaningless because we're finite, I just, I have the opposite. I think life is so meaningful because it's finite. Life is incredibly meaningful because this is your one go-around. You carry out a life form for this brief snippet of time until you lose your continuity, and the particles that make you up will slip into probably millions of other continuities and continue to experience existence until heat death of the universe. And for what reason? Probably none. Isn't that neat, though? Do you realize that your life is like your own? For real? It really is yours. It's your one.
I think the story in the Bible is actually supposed to be tragic because her life did mean something. That's the assumption in a theist worldview. With that said, your life matters too. So no matter what you're going through, whether you're having a hard time or things
don't kill yourself at the end, I guess.
Looking up for you, just know that life often gets better. Dark days do pass, and your life does mean something. There are people who care about you, so keep living.
Great.
As always, I very much appreciate you watching. God bless. I got on the...
Cool. Life will just get better. It'll just happen. That'll just happen. You have to affect change. Everyone's life means something to themselves. It doesn't have to be eternal for it to matter. I think we should do our best to promote well-being. Why? Because we only have a little bit to do it. We need to maximize our well-being. Wouldn't it be nice? I don't know. When they describe heaven and I describe how I want society to be, I don't feel like they're that different besides the whole eternal worship weirdness thing. I just don't want eternal worship. That sounds really exhausting. Why can't we just get along, man? Anyway, Bible's dumb. Bible's a big dumb book. I do like reading ancient histories of people, even if they're inaccurate. I just don't like that people live their lives by them for some reason.